Baba Anujka is a strange story, to say the least. To the point it's actually unclear when she was even born, though she resided in the small village of Vladimirovac in Yugoslavia. She was born Anica Draxin and claimed it was in 1836, though other records claim it was actually 2 years later. Anujka attended private school in Pančevo, where she would attend with rich families while she lived in her father's house. Around the age of 20, she began dating a young Austrian military officer who she ended up sleeping with. However, in doing so, she accidentally contracted syphilis. Upon finding out the news, he left her and she was completely heartbroken. And this was the event that triggered an entire life of disdain for society, specifically men. Broken from the experience, Anujka started to isolate herself from society and grew a sudden interest in medicine and chemistry. She learned to speak 5 languages fluently and actually married a landowner named Pizdov, 20 years her senior, to whom she had 11 children with. Though unfortunately only one of these would actually live long enough to become an adult. Anujka was married to Pizdov for 20 years before he passed away, though she continued to study chemistry long after his death. She made her own laboratory in one wing of their house, and she gained quite a big reputation as a healer and herbalist. Farmers' wives would seek her help for their health problems, and this was so successful she even started to gain a decent enough income to live off of what she was doing. However, she provided medicines and mixtures that made soldiers so ill they had to leave the military. She would then begin to put together poison that she would promote as magic water or love potions. She would sell these mixtures to women who had abusive husbands. They would then feed this to their partner, who would die after 8 days or so. She would pass the potions to her customers, eerily saying, "After the 8th day, you will no longer have a problem." In these mixtures there were mercury, mousetrap or tatular plants, also known as grasshopper or devil's grass. And you may be wondering how this went undetected, but these potions contained arsenic in very small quantities which would easily go unnoticed. Furthermore, she would even talk in code. If a client told her about a problem in their marriage, Anujka would reply, "How heavy is that problem?" She was actually secretly asking how big their husband's body was, so she could correctly calculate how heavy a dose she would need. Her clients admitted that they didn't know that her potions were poisonous. They just believed that she was some kind of witch, killing these men with supernatural abilities. It's unclear how many she murdered, though it's believed to have been somewhere between 50 and 150. The reason for the uncertainty is simply down to the victims' families being involved in the murders, so they refused to allow autopsies on their loved ones to be done, so it's unclear which were the effects of the potions and which were natural causes. Anujka was able to go around killing men in broad daylight from her very own business, going unconvicted for over 40 years. In June 1914, Anujka was now 78 years old, but she was arrested on suspicion of providing poison, but was soon let go due to lack of evidence. But she was so renowned and locally feared that many dubbed her the Banat Witch. By the early 1920s, she even had her own agent, Lyubina Milenkov, who would find potential clients and bring them to her home, though the potions would cost somewhere between 2,000 and 10,000 Yugoslav dinars, depending on the dosage. In January of 1924, Anujka was visited by Nikola Momirov, who had visited her in the past. She sold her the potion, which then killed her husband Lazar Ladowski after just a few days. However, Stana went on to marry another man from the very same village, but his wealthy uncle also mysteriously died of similar circumstances after a few months. Once interrogated by the police about a possible connection, Stana named Anujka as the culprit, though she still wasn't arrested. In December 1926, Anujka was now 90 years old, and she sold more poison to Sima Momirov and his wife Sofia, who were planning to kill Sima's 70-year-old father Nikola due to his alcoholic and abusive behavior to his children and grandchildren. Nikola drank the potion and died after 15 days. On May the 15th, 1928, Anujka was arrested yet again, as were Stana, Sofia and Sima, for the murder of Nikola Momirov. The trial began as chemical testing took place on samples found in Anujka's house, though the others defended themselves and insisted that they had no idea the potions were poisoned, and they pled that they only believed Anujka killed the men with supernatural abilities. Stana Momirov claimed she wanted the magic potion to actually heal her husband from his alcoholism and nothing else. Anujka defended herself and denied ever selling any poison, believing that others were framing her for their own crimes. However, on July the 6th, 1929, Anujka was found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in prison for murder, while Stana and Sofia Momirov were given life in prison. The decision was, however, appealed, and another trial took place on November the 29th and 30th, 1929. This was when Sima and Sofia admitted that they knew about the poison all along, and on the 30th, Anujka was again sentenced to 15 years in prison along with hard labour, while Stana and Sofia were given life in prison again. Anujka was, however, released early 8 years later due to old age. However, just 2 years after being released from prison, she died alone at her home at the age of 100. Going unconvicted for over 4 decades, some consider Baba Anujka to be one of the most successful serial killers in history. And it's not exactly difficult to see why, luring trusting clients into her business and murdering their husbands under the guise of helping those in troubled relationships. I guess you never really can tell who can be capable of such horrific crimes. Man, woman, child, young, old, I guess we forever will be seeking answers.